All right, welcome everybody to another fantastic session. We have a couple amazing thought leaders with us this morning. Everyone knows Ryan O'Hara. He's the VP of Growth Marketing at Lead IQ, the big personality. Can't wait to get in what we have today. And we have Kiley Caggiano. Did I get that right? Caggiano-ish?
Perfect.
Okay, all right. She's the BDR Enablement Manager at Zoom. And we're here to talk about Zoom and how does Zoom enable BDRs to deliver happiness to prospects. So talk about a bit of a loaded question there, but I'm sure we'll get to it a little bit. Ryan, I'll hand it off to you to jump in here. Of course, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, Q&A, anything like that. I'll be in there responding to things if need be, and then I'll come back on at the very end when we're wrapping up. So without further ado, Ryan, it's all you.
Thank you, Pete. And what's up, everybody? I'm really excited. Kiley, I think this is your first speaking thing too. So like everyone be cool with Kiley. She's awesome. So I just want to thank you for doing this and stuff. So Tenbound originally came to me and was like, hey, do you want to do a keynote for this stuff? And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to talk to a company that's basically just gone through a ton of stuff the past couple of years. And I can't think of a company that's gone through like crazy changes and stuff like you guys. So I was like, I got to get Kiley to come on and talk and stuff. Do you want to tell people a little bit? I know you're kind of new in your role a little bit, Kiley. Do you want to tell people a little bit like how you stumbled into the BDR enablement role, kind of?
Yeah, for sure. It was a bit of an untraditional career path that I had never really envisioned for myself. So background, I started at Zoom as a business development rep with full intentions of going to be an account executive. I was super excited and I stumbled into Zoom. I heard about it from my past experience at Gartner. Applied, got the job, and then I think maybe 2 weeks later is when the quote unquote Zoom boom happened. So here I am thinking I'm joining this, startup company, and then my first day I was just going to the offices are shut down and everyone's hair is on fire and we're scrambling to just meet this wild demand that's kind of come to Zoom. So throughout my year as a BDR, we grew so quickly and just in so many different facets that I quickly recognized a lot of areas for opportunity for how big of an impact the BDR organization can play in that. So once I started, noticing ways we could up-level our department to keep delivering happiness, it eventually just kind of evolved into me taking on this enablement role to the point where it was a very natural transition. And the AE side still might pursue that one day, but for now, really, I just want to see the BDR organization at Zoom become world-class, and here I am.
So did you like basically just sneak stuff into like a suggestion box for the BDR team over and over again? They're like, hey, Kiley knows her shit. Like, is that kind of how that happened?
We need to stop hearing from this girl. No, we have essentially like a transparent like line of communication almost. So I could take a suggestion to my manager, I could take it to the head of business development, I could take it to marketing operations. And there are ideas I had from kind of all of those angles. And it eventually got to the point where the departments met and they'd said, hey, look, we really have a need for a BDR enablement manager. And then the head of business development, like my awesome managers and team were like, well, Kiley's already kind of doing it. Like, what if she kind of got put here? So that's kind of how I wiggled my way in here.
So you were a BDR in the trenches. What's it like to prospect people that know who you are already? Because everyone pretty much, if anyone didn't know who Zoom was last year, shame on you. Leave this meeting. You make me sick. Oh my God, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, everybody probably knows who Zoom is, right? Like, what's it like kind of prospecting on the trenches with someone that actually where everybody knows who you are a little bit, like they know your company already and your product?
That's a really good question because both of my experiences doing business development, I've worked at very reputable companies like Zoom becoming that when I started, but Gartner, my experience, that's also a pretty well-known name in the tech industry. So I don't really have anything to compare it to. I can say it is very interesting because everyone knows what Zoom meetings is, right? Like we all do it, like during COVID, you met with your parents, your grandparents, your families. And that was like the main use case I saw when I was reaching out to, directors and C-levels and things of that nature. But then it was kind of opening their eyes like, yeah, Zoom is great for this is like one area that we love that we're supporting that way. But let me open your eyes to Zoom as a platform in all senses of communication and not just, kind of face-to-face online, but everything else we can do to make communication frictionless. And that was where it got really cool, just introducing Zoom as a platform versus just Zoom as a meeting solution.
Yeah. And obviously you guys have added stuff too. Like people don't know this all the way yet, but they should. Like you could literally use Zoom as a substitute for Slack or Microsoft Teams if you wanted to now with their chat stuff. We do some projects with some people outside of Lead IQ with it too, and it works great. So you're kind of in this BDR enablement role. What do you think it is? Because some people use the term enablement for like training and stuff. Some people use it for like buying tech for Zoom. Like, how do you approach it? What do you actually consider like enablement in your eyes?
That's a really good question. I feel like my answer is almost a little bit sappy, like because I was a BDR, it's a cause like so near and dear to my heart. But ultimately, I think enablement is providing BDRs with any resources, knowledge, technical skills, soft skills necessary for them to hit their quota and make money the fastest, but ultimately get them pushed forward to AE as fast as they can as well.
Yeah, so you kind of like the hard part is you're not just building process, but like, yo, do your job, keep your head down, get the stuff done. You're actually thinking like, I want to get this person so that they're equipped to learn stuff to be an AE someday at Zoom, right?
Absolutely. Like in my perspective, like nobody goes into BDR saying like, oh, this is my career. Like I want to make 100 dials a day for the rest of my life. Like I can't wait to make these cold emails. Like BDR is the foundational skill set of the best enterprise salesperson in the world. Like I read something the other day, it was like most CEOs, CMOs, COOs started their days cold calling. So this foundation is really important for a lot of people. So you want to make sure, it's as great as possible.
So let's get into the nitty gritty a little bit for stuff. When you did prospecting, how was it set up would the team make templates that you guys would use? Would it be like, how much was personalized? Like what was that whole thing like?
It has evolved a lot since I started. So in the beginning, it was very much, Zoom's culture we call it speed of trust. Like it was very much, everyone writes their own messaging, send it out when you can. We got to meet this demand. We got to get our footprint out there now that people know who we are. Prospect. And it was really high activity. Once we kind of reached, that point where our name was out there, then it was like, let's get very, very tailored and very customized to what the customers are needing from Zoom based on the use cases that we've seen in this, crazy time. That's when we kind of set up more of a framework around messaging. We have, sequences and messaging strings of things of that nature that serve as a foundation and like kind of the bones of what BDRs can utilize. But BDRs, it's on them to customize it based on whatever account, industry, individual even to use that messaging for. So we have a library of frameworks, I should say.
When does something become a framework? Like, do you do cold emails and cold calls? You're like, hey, that kind of worked. Let's put that somewhere. Like, what's the process like for that? When do you know something's good and it's working?
It's a ton of experimentation. Like, to be honest, we have started looking really closely at, open rates, reply rates, time to reply. We look very closely at the data and analytics behind the success of sequences and messaging. So for example, if a BDR comes out of a meeting that they set and they might come to, their manager and say, listen, like there's a use case about Zoom that I just learned about that I think would be really important for telling that story to other people in their position. How can we make this into a really crafted story to have them take a meeting? And boom, a sequence is born, right? Like,
so I love that you're using data for this stuff. I'll tell you something that always bugs me is like, you'll see these reps that are out there that are like, oh, I'm going to look at a blog post about like, what are the best subjects to use? And like, what's the right copy to use and that stuff? And the thing is, it's so different for every company too. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I've seen time and time again over the past couple of years is like, you could go try any subject, you try tricks and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the best subjects are the ones that are vague, but open, like enough to draw curiosity for someone to open, but relate to the body. Because like you and I, Kylie, could go prospect someone and be like, hey, your kid's sick at the hospital as a subject and you get 100% open rate. But you'd also be a dirtbag if you did something like that, right? Like, so like it's a good blend of like trying to find stuff that actually relates to what you talk about in the body, but's relevant and personalized to that prospect. And that's why like I get bummed when I get asked like, what's a good subject for this stuff? Because like it all comes down to like, what's the angle of personalization you're using? Can you tweak that stuff? And then can you build a framework to get reps to come up with that when they're doing their actual subject and stuff?
Yeah.
We do have a couple questions. One person asked, how do you deviate from enabling and teaching versus allowing the manager to lead?
I guess I'm trying to understand the question. So what is the difference between the two? I guess I should ask.
Yeah, I think the idea is that your manager might want to teach a team member. Well, here's me kind of speaking for the person, but like your manager might want to ask a team member something like, they might want to teach them one thing, but your company has a different framework for like battle cards on something or how to handle a certain situation. Do you work with managers on that stuff? Like, do you guys all huddle together and come up with like, what do we want the rep to do in this scenario and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's very much like a unified front, right? Like, if there's something that one person needs to be enabled on and that need becomes apparent for just one person, there's 100% likelihood that other people need to be supported in that area as well. So managers, we meet really frequently to understand like where those needs are. And then it's just a game plan of, okay, if this is the situation they're facing, how do we enable them to overcome that? And that's when the ideas get really creative. Like, okay, if they're getting this objection, what kind of knowledge can we equip them with to be really convicted in how to overcome that? Or if, we're not really sure about this new product offering that Zoom has, who can we bring in to explain the value behind that product so they can re-articulate it? So I think it's just an ongoing fluid form of ideas. And to the second part of that, I mean, managers also have the independent ability to, do their own thing with their teams. Like if their team is seeing a specific need, absolutely, managers have autonomy and are highly encouraged to address that in whatever way they see fit.
Another question we have, curious, is there any metric that sticks out from the rest for you putting together the messaging framework? Like, is there one stat that you're always looking for?
Like open rate and reply rate, obviously, so for example, if we're creating a new sequence for a brand new use case or a brand new industry or something, we might create 2 different forms of like an introductory email, like variants. After 200 prospects have gone through that, or it's been filtered through for a few months, we're going to see which one has the higher open rate and which one has a higher reply rate. And then that's going to be the one we stick with. So those are factors that are really important. Also time of day for calls, like you want to also be very cognizant of that as well. And then order of steps, I think, is also very important. Right now, we're experimenting with the success of calling first before emailing, with the voicemail being, hey, I'm about to send you an email. This is going to be the subject line. It's really important for you for these reasons to open. Will you open it for me? And then we've seen, open rates obviously increase after something like that. So that's another fun metric to look at as well.
You guys want a tip? I got a cool tip for that. So if you leave a voicemail for someone on a first step and you leave a voicemail, what you did is right there is perfect. You hype and specifically say the subject of the email. If you want to get a little bit more sizzle and have a little bit more fun, at the end of the voicemail, say, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to be the greatest email you've ever read. And then obviously you have to write a really great email, like do something fun and clever, something different with it. But like, if you hype it up, that person's going to see in their voice, you know how it does voice to text on your voicemail. They'll see that and be like, oh crap, I got to go look for that voicemail now. And I actually do this all the time. If someone leaves me a voicemail when they're prospecting me, like I literally will go look for that if they say something about the email they're going to get. So I love the idea of shouting out the subject and also hype your stuff and then live up to the hype.
Yeah, I think even to add on to that, you could even say like, hey, this can be the best email you've ever read, and it's going to take you 15 seconds to read it. Like that is another value add. Like it's not going to be this novel. Like you're going to open it and it's going to hit home and you're going to take a meeting, obviously. So I love that.
You know what else is a bummer that I see? And I know you guys do this because we get upsold and prospected by the AMs and stuff at Zoom too. And we've upgraded a bunch of times, so it's worked. Damn you. No, I'm just kidding. It's really great. One of the other things that I think is really smart is a lot of companies will go and put something in a sequence and then they don't acknowledge the other activity that they did. You know what I mean? So like if you leave a voicemail and then you send an email, I know there are people that say don't reference failure. Don't reference failure. Use it as an omni-channel approach to make them all talk to each other. Use the voicemail to hype your email. Use your email to reference the voicemail that you did. And if you did something extraordinary in the voicemail, bring that thing up in your email and it kind of makes it all work together like you're painting a picture.
Yeah, same with LinkedIn. Ties in there as well, the omni-channel approach.
So someone in chat saying, have fun with your voicemails. I'm using a monitor. It's like really far away, so the text is really small. Could find, put your personality into your voicemails a little bit too. Does Zoom, Kylie, do you touch anything with hiring at all? Or do you just touch like people coming in and onboarding and stuff when they come in?
As of right now, it's just onboarding. The managers and the BDR like powers that be oversee that. And then right now I'm just responsible for help, and along with some of my incredible team, we're responsible for getting them onboarded and settled in.
What do you do for like, do you guys do anything to coach reps into like putting their personality into stuff too? Like, or is it kind of like, do you kind of just hope they'll figure that out?
Yeah, it's actually really funny. So I'll tell you this funny story. We promote that a lot. Like, sequences are a great framework, but ultimately they're not going to work if you don't put your personality in it or your tailored research into it. So I think that's communicated very frequently. But an example of that, and I should send him this after because he's going to laugh, we have a really successful BDR who will frequently use the word hustle in his like outreaches. Like, hey, hope you respect the hustle. Like, I know I've reached out a few times. Hope you can respect the hustle. But I know that I'm convicted I could earn your time based on X, Y, and Z. I don't think I could ever say that. I don't think I'm cool enough to like pull off, I hope you respect my hustle. Like, or
yeah.
my
yeah.
But I, on the other hand, am like very bubbly, like, you know, warm, like emotional connection. That might resonate better with more people. Like, it's just a matter of what kind of person you are and trying to tie that into your messaging and tone.
There's a way to appeal to every buyer. Everybody's got different pieces of them. I mean, some of us will like, everybody in this meeting's probably cried at least once this year, right? Come on, someone's had a tear. You're watching the end of Forrest Gump. He's reading to Jenny's grave and you got tears coming out. Like, that's happening. Everybody's got something like that. I think it's a really good point. The most important part too that we're seeing is like the people that you prospect are extraordinary. And if you go to them and you're not extraordinary, you're going to have a lot of trouble with like standing out to them and being different. The biggest differentiator you have, because there's so many, I mean, even Zoom, there's like, you guys have a ton of competitors too. The thing that differentiates you is you. Like, that's the thing that's going to kind of make you stand out and do stuff and have a big difference. One question we have is who makes the best enablement managers? Like, what skills and experience do you think you guys look for?
I mean, guys, like I said, I'm new at this, so I'm still figuring this out as well. But if, from my perspective and getting into this role and this weird journey that it's taken me to get here, I would say you have to be really hungry. Like, you could have the best onboarding in the world. You could have great sequences, but if you're not always hungry to continue growing your BDR department and your BDR organization to be the most standout department at your company, maybe like you don't want to be an enablement. Maybe you just want to be great at sales and an individual contributor, and like, that's fine. I've wanted to do that, you know, my whole professional career, but seeing the bigger picture and the role you play in the overall company is something you should definitely look for when you're trying to enable your team.
So you're doing enablement for Zoom. You guys have a complex thing where you're doing some inbound and some outbound, right? So like people come in wanting to talk to your team for stuff, and the SDR and the BDR team they're actually working those people too. What's the process like for outbound? So like how does it start? Do they work off named accounts? Like how's that whole part structured?
Yeah, it's broken down in different like segments, right? Like, you have like education, healthcare, government. You try to be really specialized, and then from there it's broken down by like company size, because company sizes are going to have different needs. From that, you support a couple of different account executives. Depending on your team, you might have 2, you might have 6. You know, it kind of varies based on use case. But those AEs have their book of business, obviously, and the BDRs are responsible for growing that book of business. Does that help you understand?
Yeah. Do the BDRs stick to one industry, that means? So like, if I'm a BDR, let's say I work education, am I only prospecting to schools?
Exactly. And it could be like K through 12, it could be higher education, like it's segmented as much as possible, because we've touched on it before, but our BDRs are really coached to be a value add and deliver happiness. And part of that is knowing your stuff, like, to put it simply. Like, you want to be as specialized as possible to your specific niche so that you can help the customer as fast as possible. And like, that comes from the top down, bottom up, BDRs included.
Yeah, I think it's actually really smart too, because I know we were talking about this before, like last week when we were meeting and prepping for this too. One of the things that we were kind of huddling and talking about is like, you want your reps to be industry experts in their area, and it's a lot easier to do that if you're in one industry. Do you guys rotate reps through different industries, or do they stick to one and that's their position?
They usually stick to it, you know, and we honestly, like, there's a lot of camaraderie. We don't see a ton of people in an industry like, I don't want to be in this industry anymore. The teams are all so special that people typically find their place in it like any other team, and they're fine being there and developing their skill set till they're ready to go to AE.
So one question we have is, what niche variables do you focus on? Industry ? Like I should have gone up industry. Customers of who you're targeting. So is it basically you look at a customer you close and say, what industry is that? Oh oh, we've got a bucket of those people. Let's make this a group that we go after, a vertical. Is that how that happens, sort of, or is it more like, we don't have anyone in this space, let's go after it?
I mean, I'm trying to process the question. The variables that we focus on for verticals, it's not like still being built out. Like Zoom has a specific offering for education, healthcare, and government. And all of those with different feature sets that are specific to those verticals. Everyone else, our messaging is tailored based on industry. So whether it's retail, whatever it is, it's based on that. It's based on their size, and it's based on the individual person in some cases. The more tailored you can get in your outreach, the better. And that's kind of how we break it down into buckets.
Do the BDRs only work with a group of AEs, or do they is it random who they're giving it to, or how's that work? Are they assigned to an AE group or something, or how's that work?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like a round robin. I know some companies have found success in that. So we have AEs and BDRs are segmented kind of in the same way. Just how there are education BDRs, they're education account executives who only sell to those verticals. So those AEs and those BDRs will be partnered together.
What's the ratio? Is it 1-to-1 or something, or 2-to-1, or how's it work?
It varies based on your team and the target ratio. When I was a BDR, I worked with 2 AEs at a time. Some people work with 4. I know some people that have had 6 before. So, which can be kind of difficult to manage. But I mean, that's just what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, so the speed of trust thing is very interesting at Zoom. I think that's a really great value that a lot of companies don't basically trust. I think it's something that companies need to do. If you're here attending this and you work at a company and that company doesn't trust you, you might not want to work there. You know what I mean? I think it's an important value that your employer trusts you while you're doing this stuff. It's really great. So because of this, how much autonomy do the BDRs get? Are they basically, do they have a structure to their day, or they get to decide that stuff on their own?
That's a really good question. So there is structure to an extent, and they can design their day how they want, but ultimately BDRs need to be making their touch points. So we have a KPI metric, it's 100 touches a day, whether that's email, LinkedIn, or calls. When you do those or how you do those is totally up to you. We have suggested guidelines using the messaging frameworks and sequences, but if you find success doing something totally out of left field, go for it. If you find you work best in the mornings, wake up at 6 a.m. and get all of your stuff done and take off a little bit early if you want. But if you deliver, we're going to trust you to keep doing what works.
Yeah. So when you were a BDR, for example, I think it's easier to talk about that because, you did that for a couple of years. How'd you structure your day? What'd you do and how did it work?
It's actually really funny. I saw success in my tenure as a BDR, and one of my great friends at work, Toby, he said the craziest thing for my success is I wake up and do the same thing every day. It is always tried and true. And I kind of had the same approach. So mine would be the morning. First thing I would do is hit the phone, eat the frog, get it out of the way. Cold calling isn't always the most luxurious thing in the world. So I would do that while I'm up because I'm a morning person. My energy comes when I sign on. If I call in the afternoon, I'm not going to be 100% there. And I was just fully aware of that.
I have a question. I don't want to ruin your flow, but I just want to ask this.
Yeah.
When you did this, would you log in and you just have a bunch of steps and outreach that were calls or something? Is that how it would work or?
Exactly. He beat. So I would open my laptop, open outreach, and then all of my tasks that are due that day are listed right there. And then I would segment it to calls first, knock out my dials, knocked out my LinkedIn touches, knock out my emails, and then the rest of the day is spent finding more contacts, account research, and then independent learning and professional, building, whatever that is.
So we definitely are getting near the end here on this, Kylie. You've done a bunch of stuff with touching. You've talked about how you guys do stuff. One of the other ideas that I really love that you talked about was getting people internally to come talk to the team regularly. Can you talk about that a little bit and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all falls into the speed of trust bucket. So we have executives from Zoom. They'll come and speak to the BDR org. So for example, if we want to run a play where we want to target HR leaders, we want our BDRs to be very convicted in the value that we can bring to HR teams. We'll have our chief human resource officer or a chief people officer come and deliver like a talk to Zoom about like, hey, these are my priorities. This is how Zoom could help me. How would you tell that story? And then it's very engaging, very open-ended. Same with marketing. Our CEO has spoken to us several times about, similar things. And then it's also a chat first culture, like video first, but then chat in terms of streamlined communication. So if you're working on a play, I could chat my CMO right now. I could have on my first day at Zoom, and she would reply with help. Like it's
that's awesome.
Huge support.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, Kiley, thank you for taking the time with us. Everybody that's here, if you want to talk to me or pick my brain or anything, we have a booth that we're hanging out in all day here at Tenbound. Just go over and check it out. Pete, you want to add anything else? You want to hype the next session?
Yeah, not at all. Kiley, thank you so much. It was awesome to hear from you. Obviously, we know Zoom has been a massive part of all of our lives for the last year plus. So thank you so much. Ryan, as always, man, you're the greatest. Thank you so much for hosting this thing. As Ryan mentioned, we do have tables for you guys to go to talk to Kiley, talk to Ryan, and all of our sponsors. So make sure to head over there. You can sit down at a table, talk one-on-one with folks, and make sure to get as much info as you can. Thank you so much again.
Thank you again, Kiley. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.